Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reading an article from Gallup on how social conservatism in the United States is highest in about a decade. So the story highlights, just to give you kind of the TLDR, too long didn't read, 38% say they are conservative on social issues, which is up from 33% last year. Okay, so a 5% increase is a pretty significant increase, I would say. Highest percentage saying they are socially conservative since 2012. Yeah, I'd have to think, what is it about 2012? What changed there? I would say probably around 2016 is when the kind of radical progressivism really took hold of academic institutions and really the wider world to a certain extent. So what is 2012? Why were people more socially conservative then? 44% say they are economically conservative, also the highest since 2012. So 2012 was apparently a good year for conservatives. Okay, so more Americans this year say they are very conservative or conservative on social issues than said so in 2022 and 2021. At the same time, the percentage saying their social views are very liberal or liberal has dipped to 29% from 34% in each of the past 2 years, while the portion identifying as moderates remains near at a third. Okay, so that tells me a little bit of interesting information here. It could tell us that people are going from liberal or very liberal to conservative, but what's more likely is that you are seeing people who are moderates going further to the right and people who are liberals going to the moderate position. So instead of people like completely jumping from far left to far right, they are jumping from far left to moderate and moderate to right wing. And so that's interesting. It's also extremely understandable given the things that are going on in Western society with drag queen story hours, drag shows everywhere, multiple Pride months per year, just the various other things that are going on in Western society, what I would consider to be degenerate behavior. Apparently, there is at least a little bit of a backlash to that and a rising social conservatism. Oh no, I cannot say that word at all, apparently. The last time this many Americans said they were socially conservative was 2012, during a period when consistently more U.S. adults identified as conservative rather than liberal on social issues. Okay, I really was hoping they would go over like why 2012. What was so good about 2012 for conservatives? Maybe it was a media thing, media and entertainment. Maybe they weren't as hostile towards conservatives as they are now, because like you can't watch any TV shows at this point without them like completely disparaging conservatives. It's like just the absolute most caricatured conservatives possible. You saw some of that throughout the past few decades, but I think media and entertainment really got bad like this past decade. So maybe 2012 was like that time. And the thing is, people are heavily influenced by media and entertainment. So I could imagine if that was like the turning point for media and entertainment, that was when people quit saying they were conservative. And maybe people are coming back because they're realizing how terrible things are now, and they're like, well, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't believe media and entertainment. That's entirely possible. I mean, trust in institutions is going down, so that would make a whole lot of sense. But again, I really do wish Gallup would kind of come up with some guesses about why these changes are occurring and why those changes occurred before back in 2012. The results are based on Gallup's annual Values and Beliefs survey conducted May 1st through 24th. The survey comes at a time when many states are considering policies regarding transgender matters, abortion, crime, drug use, and the teaching of gender and sexuality in schools. The increase in conservative identification on social issues over the past 2 years is seen among nearly all political and demographic subgroups. Oh, that's actually very interesting. Usually you would see it among a few different groups, so seeing it among all of them it tells you that this is actually swaying in a certain direction. Republicans show one of the largest increases from 60% to 74%. Okay, so that obviously that makes a lot of sense. Although it should also tell you that these parties are becoming increasingly homogenous in terms of political beliefs. You used to have kind of rhinos, Republican in name only, and you had like a few different other little groups within the Democrats and Republicans that made sure that there weren't only conservatives within one party and only liberals in the other party. But now you're seeing the homogeneity of the various parties go up. Independents show a modest uptick of 5 percentage points from 24 to 29%, while there has been no change among Democrats. Okay, so interesting. So their party is not becoming more homogenous, although you can see that they were already very homogenous to begin with. 90% were not conservative. Whereas the Republicans did not consider themselves conservatives over the past couple of years. Or at least some did not. but now they are. Since 2021, there have been double-digit increases in conservative social ideology among middle-aged adults. Okay, interesting. Those between the ages of 30 and 64. At the same time, older American ideologies on social issues has been stable. Oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder why that'd be the case. While there has been a modest increase in conservative social ideology among young adults. Oh, I wonder what we can glean from that. So the biggest increase is the middle-aged adults, and I'm concerned that I'm now apparently considered a middle-aged adult. When did that happen? Anyways, I wonder why they would be considered more conservative. I mean, maybe they had rose-tinted glasses and they were more liberal back in young adulthood, and then they grew into adulthood and saw they didn't like the direction of the country, and they would actually have to kind of live through the country declining, and so they decided to become more conservative. And then that also kind of explains the older adults, like the boomer generation, which I complain about all the time. I've heard so many boomers tell me the America's declining and they're glad they don't have to live through it because they're going to die soon because they're old. And I just want to yell at them, you understand that it's your policies that led to these decline. You guys are the ones that are in charge. Boomers are still in charge of the United States at this point. If you look at the amount of people in Congress, the amount of people getting elected to various offices, it's the boomers, because the boomers are such a significant portion of the population, and they've held power essentially since they became adults. And so if the country is declining, it's because you guys have been in power the entire time. And their entire thing is, well, sure, it's declining, but I mean, we're not going to live through it. So sucks to suck. And it's just wow. And it's nice to see that young adults are starting to recognize this as well, that these problems are occurring. Unfortunately, I think that the baby boomers who have been at the helm of this ship, they're going to crash it completely before they pass on the reins to younger generations. And so it's a sad state of affairs, but that is the state of affairs America's in, because boomers are literally the worst generation in history by a significant amount. I say this all the time, and I will continue to harp on this. Baby boomers are the one generation that didn't sacrifice for the future. Every other generation sacrificed for the future. Meanwhile, the baby boomers, they took on the benefits of the sacrifice of generations before them, and then they also took on all the benefits of the generations that were supposed to get it after them. They did not sacrifice at all for the future of America. And future generations are going to be the ones that pay the repercussions, while the baby boomer generation are going to be 6 feet under the ground. So it actually makes me kind of angry just to think about how that's going. Economic conservatism also ticks up. So they were talking about social conservatism before. When Americans are asked to describe their views on economic issues, 44% identify as conservative, 44%, or conservative, very conservative, 33% moderate, and 21% very liberal or liberal. The percentage saying they are conservative average 40% between 2020 and 2022. Okay, so going up there. The current figure is the highest since 46%, 2012. Again, really wish they would just kind of take some guesses about why that is. I would like to know what their thoughts are on why 2012 was so good for conservatives. Americans have consistently been more likely to say they are conservative on economic issues rather than liberal by no fewer than 16 percentage points. Okay. During the polls, I think it's because it's more socially acceptable to say you're economically conservative versus socially conservative. So people are more willing to say it, I believe. I think that's the case. During the polls field period, President Joe Biden and Congress debated legislation to raise the federal debt ceiling and cut federal spending. Americans have been more likely to identify as economically conservative rather than liberal because Republicans overwhelmingly say they're conservative, but Democrats are not overwhelmingly liberal. Okay, so they, I guess, view themselves as moderate. In 2023, 79% of Republicans identify as conservative on economic issues, while 48% of Democrats say they're liberal. Additionally, more independents identify as economic conservatives than liberals. Yeah, that's something I noticed about American polls, is that the moderates consider themselves centrists, consider themselves to be more conservative in a lot of cases. I think they just don't want to admit to being conservatives. And so whenever you look at actual polling of their policy beliefs, they tend to align more with conservatives. About half of independents say they are moderate on economic matters. Partisans' ideology on economic issues has been steady in recent years. The modest shifts in economic ideology among national adults are instead driven by slight changes in political party identification among U.S. adults. Okay, so let's see. From an average 29% Republican, 32% Democrat in 2020 and 2021 surveys to 30% Republican, 29% Democrat in 2023. Okay, so Republicans only had a 1% increase in Republican identification in a few years, while Democrats had a 3% decline. So that tells you that more people are opting out of being a Democrat while still not being a Republican. That should tell you that the duopoly is losing a lot of legitimacy there. So that's interesting. I expect those numbers to continue to decline for party identifications because people are just opting out of the two-party system because they understand that no matter who you have in charge, it's going to be the same policies. Like, look at the current Israeli-Palestine crisis, where no matter who you ask in politics, they're all on the side of Israel, just completely wiping out Gaza. Like, you saw people like Lindsey Graham, Tulsi Gabbard, everyone was just like frothing at the mouth. Bernie Sanders, like, just no matter who you look at, they were just frothing at the mouth against Palestinians, which was extremely disappointing. I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard in a few other videos. I was very disappointed by her statements. Because she was supposed to be that kind of moderate, that independent, that rebel against Democrats, and just turned out she was another controlled opposition. So the bottom line, for the most part over the past 8 years, Americans were about as likely to say they were liberal as conservative on social issues. This year, there's more obvious conservative advantage. The shift is mostly due to increasing social conservatism among Republicans at a time when social issues such as transgender rights, abortion, and other hot-button concerns are prominent in the national public debate. Greater social conservatism may be fostering an environment more favorable to, I'm going to practice saying conservatism after this recording. You wait. More favorable to passing conservative leaning social legislation, especially in Republican-dominated states. Indeed, in the past year, many Republican states have passed stricter constraints on abortion, limited choices for transgender youth in sports participation, and healthcare. Okay, that's a very biased way of saying it. Constraints on abortions, limited choices for transgender youth, and place prohibitions on what topics can be discussed in classroom settings. So just obviously, you can see by how they worded those things that this is propaganda, that they don't like the way things are going. They don't like that people are waking up to their cult, their indoctrination, their garbage. And so, yeah, they just, the way they phrased it, it's like, instead of saying pro-choice versus pro-life, both of those are kind of like, I think, reasonable things to say. They say pro-choice, anti-choice. They just like make it sound as disparaging as possible. Just ridiculous things to persuade people. Obvious manipulation tactics. Americans remain more likely to say they are conservative on economic issues when asked to describe their political views overall without reference to social or economic issues. 40% say they have conservative views, 31% moderate, and 26% liberal overall. Ideological identification, thus, is less conservative than it is for economic issues, but more conservative than for social issues, though closer to the social issues figure. Interesting stuff. So this is by Gallup. If you want to read more about their poll, they have that, what is it, values and beliefs survey. If you want to read the other questions they have, feel free to go to their website and check things out. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more content, and leave us a comment in the comment box. I love reading what you have to say, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.